What is the smallest lie you've ever told which had the biggest consequences? My first year walking to school alone was the 7th grade and I was late a lot. It got to a point that the teacher told me I would have to do all the day's chores, putting chairs down in the morning, wiping boards clean, cleaning after lunch, etc., if I was late again. Well, the next day I was running late as usual. Being a lazy sob, I knew I had to do something to get out of doing the daily chores. So when the teacher asked me why I was late, I thought back on the assembly we had a few weeks prior on school safety. So I told the teacher that a strange man pulled up to me when I was coming into school grounds and asked me to come with him to see some puppies. I honestly thought that would be a good enough excuse and it would be the end of it. Faking, nope. School was suspended for the rest of the day, police were called, my parents were called in. And I was interviewed for the entire day. Had to describe the man, the car, everything. They ended up hiring a security officer for the grounds because of that incident and put in a few new cameras. We had monthly school assemblies because of it too. And it was all for nothing. Because less than a week later I was late again and had to do all the daily chores. In college, the girls in the apartment downstairs asked my roommate and I if we'd like to join them at a concert a month away. Neither of us wanted to, and my quick-thinking roommate said that date is my birthday. It wasn't, and we have other plans. They ended up not going to the concert, and we had forgotten about it, but on that date they called me downstairs to help them move something. I walked in the door, and surprise! A birthday party for me with about 15 people there. My roommate was just as surprised. I couldn't tell them the truth and just went with it. Even got a couple small gifts. I always felt guilty about it. When I was younger at a birthday party, a girl asked me for a quarter to call home for her dad to come get her. I told her that I didn't have one and she got a ride home from another parent. Later, I heard that when she got home, she found ambulances around her house because her father had died falling out of a tree doing yard work. I kept imagining that if I had given her the quarter, her dad would have come to get her instead of continuing yard work. If I had given her a quarter, maybe she would still have a father. Once when I was a kid I invited a kid that I bullied horribly over to my house for a sleepover because I was told I had to do something nice for someone I hurt by our priest during confession. I went to a Catholic school. The next day after a pretty boring night we were playing in the snow banks and I lied telling him my foot was stuck and I couldn't get it out. He ran well over a mile back to my house to get my mom to save me. Well, that kind of woke me up and made me realize this kid isn't that bad. After that day I never bullied anyone again. And 20 years later that turd that I bullied so terribly is still my best friend, was the best man at my wedding, and the godfather of my first child. Once when I was around 6 or 7 my mom brought home some delicious chocolate, and gave some to me. I loved the stuff and stole the bar that she had saved for my stepdad. He comes home and my mom can't find the chocolate. She asks me what happened to it. I blame the Duncan, our dog, knowing that he often eats things off the counter. I didn't know at the time that chocolate was toxic for dogs. My mom goes terribly pale and rushes Duncan to the vet, and he has to throw up. I felt terrible about this as I thought it was because he stole the chocolate and was some form of punishment. The next day she brings home more chocolate. Nobody told me that it was for Duncan's own good that he was taken to the vet. So feeling bad for doing this to Duncan, I give him my chocolate this time thinking he deserved it after taking one for the team last time. Later that night my mom asks me how the chocolate was. This time I decided to tell the full truth and explain that I gave the chocolate to Duncan this time as I felt bad for getting him in trouble the first time. So another late night trip to the vet, and I finally was told that chocolate is toxic for dogs. Duncan was fine in the end, and for the rest of his life I snuck him meat and other things that would not kill him. Now the twist is that the very expensive vet trips cost a lot of money, which prompted my mom to take a look at our expenses. She found that the then stepdad was hiding an affair, and then got a divorce. I've told this story before, but during my undergrad I took a number of business courses. During one of these courses we were learning about a small company that produced high-end jam. The professor asked the class what we thought of high-end jam as a business. I said that it was a stupid idea. Why would I pay $20 for a bottle of jam when I could make it myself? I meant that as a rhetorical question, but apparently my professor took my literally. When I was packing up at the end of class the professor came over to me and started asking me all sorts of questions about jam making. So I rolled with it. I lied and told him how my grandmother taught me how to make jam, when the right time to pick the berries was to ensure optimal jam, etc. I don't know how to make jam. I had no idea what I was saying, but the professor bought it. We became buds. After every class we would chat, mostly about jam. He wrote my reference letter to get into my competitive undergrad program and again when I applied for my master's. I owe most of my academic career to Jam. I walked in on my friend finishing a conversation on her phone. She looked at me, petrified, and asked if I heard everything. I told her with a defeated face yes. She starts crying and leans on me, telling me she is so afraid and doesn't know what to do. I did this initially as a joke, but obviously I'm in deep water now, so I just tell her everything will be fine and to call me whenever she needed me. Turns out she got pregnant and asked me to go to an abortion clinic with her. Her boyfriend scrammed. We are best of friends now. My friends and I accidentally got a kid suspended. We finished the last class of our day before lunch on a Friday, and we were feeling pretty good, so we picked up a handful of rocks and tried to see who could throw them the furthest. Turns out one hit our teacher. She brought us into the office and made us tell the vice principal our story. Since she wasn't in the room, we lied through our teeth and made up a description of a kid we'd never seen before. A week later, the guidance teacher approaches us and tells us she's glad we didn't take the blame for the kid who threw rocks because the principal found out who it was and he's be getting a 3-day suspension from school. When I was in the 3rd grade, right after the recess bell rang, I told a random girl that her best friend did not want to be friends with her anymore. She stayed outside crying in the field and it wasn't until 45 minutes later that they found her. She didn't come back to school until the next week. Told my parents I had lost my crappy phone on a bike ride, c.2010, when I had actually put it under my bed so I could get a new touchscreen phone over my crappy Alcatel phone. Mum went to phone shop and tripped on ledge outside, shattered her left elbow, narrowly missed out on having the joint replaced with surgery. To this day she can't bend her left arm past 150 degrees and can't kneel as tripping faked her knees up big style and caused a hernia in her stomach that the National Health Service refused to operate on unless it becomes life-threatening. Crappiest son over here. When I was 15, I was Skype messaging my girlfriend of 2 months. I wanted attention, so when we were signing off I told her I was going to kill myself that night. Never planned on doing. Was just a dumb 15-year-old who wanted attention. Well, she told her mom and then her mom called my parents to check on me. My parents and I then had a long talk about how my cousin had attempted suicide and that it isn't something to be taken lightly. I tried to explain to them that I was joking, and they sorta bought it and recognized I was immature. My girlfriend broke up with me a week or so after that, big surprise. And I got sorta depressed. My parents then pulled me out of the public high school and had me go to the private Christian school. Going to the Christian school affected where I chose to go to college. I met the girl I planned to spend the rest of my life with at said college. I have no idea what my life would be if I just decided to not be immature and joke about suicide. Oh man. When I was 7 I had been learning how to play the keyboard for 2 years. It was one of those Casio keyboards that had light up keys to learn how to play a song. If you put the easy setting on you could literally hit 1 or 2 keys over and over again and it would play the entire song through. So at the age of 7 my grandparents thought I was a prodigy. I could play Für Elise, Canon in D and Moonlight Sonata. Family and friends would come over to listen, watch me play and were astounded. 2 years or so go by like this. For my 10th birthday my grandparents bought me a real piano and signed me up for a summer camp where prodigies of different instruments went to compete. Very expensive. My entire family, friends from school and a priest family friend was there for my birthday party and wanted to hear me play on my new piano. I broke down crying and ran to my room and confessed to my grandmom what I had been doing for years, and it broke her heart and trust for me. It sucked. I still cringe when I think about it. I've been playing for over 20 years now though and can play all of the songs I listed and probably hundreds more now. Back when I was 16 I was a camp counselor for a group of kindergartners. A few of them wouldn't stop shoving each other, so I told them, jokingly, to save it for Fight Club, which was at the end of the day. Being kids they thought Fight Club was real and told their parents about Fight Club, which resulted in me having to explain to the administration and all the parents that no. There was no Fight Club. I wasn't hired the following year. They broke the first rule of Fight Club. When I was about 13 I called a little boy ugly. At the time, my mom's best friend was driving me home from school. Of course she told my mother what I said, and my mom asked me to not say things like that. I told her I didn't call anyone ugly. It was a little lie. At first I didn't know what she was talking about, and it became this big whole ordeal about my kid would never lie to me and why would I lie about this. They were best friends and they no longer speak because of this. All 3 of us were dumb and immature. I told my mom I hated her the morning she passed away. I was 10. She was 39. I wish I could take it back, every single day. I was at a job fair against my will. Was trying to steal a pen so I could retire to a dark corner and doodle while everyone else did their thing. The lady caught me taking a pen, and I had to act interested in her sales pitch. Then a news reporter showed up. Before I knew it, I was in national papers as a general human interest story, as a turnaround miracle story, of how I'd come all the way from the barren plains of another country far away while kicking mental illness and addiction, and now wanted to become a nurse. I don't, nor have I ever, wanted to be a nurse, but that interview sure snowballed all out of proportion. All I wanted was a free pen. It's been 10 years and people are still asking how the nursing career is going. My step-grandpa would call after my grandma died once in a while about his car and then turn it into a chat. He always thought I was my brother over the phone, and most of the time I corrected him. Ever since my grandma died, he literally started drinking himself to death. I saw him a few months after her death and he was really skinny and barely still with it. I remember holding back tears as he tried to tell me a joke. This sad, incredibly weak old man who was a few weeks from dying was mustering all the strength he had to tell me a joke. It was actually pretty funny too. He was always kind of in his hole, which for some reason made me so much more sad to see him like this. I sometimes wonder why that is. Fast forward a few weeks. He called our house to speak to my brother, who is a mechanic, to ask him a question about his car. I answered, and again, he thought I was my brother. I tried probably about 10 times to correct him, but he kept talking without much of a chance for me to say, "Let me go get my brother." Anyway, the small lie is that I had a 20 minutes conversation with my step-grandpa who thought I was my brother the whole time. He asked me a lot of personal questions and I did my best to answer them the way I thought my brother would. I don't know yet, but for some reason when I remember this it makes me feel horrible. Also, this was likely the last time he talked to anybody before he went to the hospital and died. When I was little, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I was playing with my cousin. He is my best friend, even if we have grown apart in the last few years. Anyway, I told him if he jumps out of the tree onto the trampoline, he can get into the club. He jumped and jarred his knee. He screamed blue murder. There was no club. There was no entry test. The injury plays up till this day. It affected him when he was playing gridiron. He had to give it up. It affected him when he joined the army and again when he became a cop. I'm worried one day he dies because of that knee and I'll blame myself for it. Not sure if this counts as a lie, but I convinced my sister that the word dead meant gone. My little sister is 16 years younger than me. When she started talking, every time someone would leave the room, I'd say X dead, like mummy dead. Eventually, she believed that the word dead meant gone, and she started to use it herself. Needless to say, my mother wasn't very happy, but we all found it kind of funny, to be honest, and when you laugh at something a child does, they do it again and again. She got to about 2.5 years old, and my mum dropped her off at nursery. Up until this point, for whatever reason, she'd never said it outside the house. So in the middle of the day, when she said "Mummy dead," the care workers at the nursery freaked the fake out. They tried to ring my mum, but she is notoriously terrible with phones and so didn't answer. She's also quite often late. The workers at the nursery were apparently just about to ring the police when my mum finally showed up. She had to explain what her big brother had done. I was practically crying with laughter when I was told what happened. Too long, didn't read, convinced my young sister that dead meant gone. She scared some nursery workers with what they thought was a premonition of some kind. When telling stories on Reddit I change up a few details. Like if I'm 18 I'll say I'm 17 or 19, I'll say I live in a town one town over, stuff like that. The point is, if someone gets pissed at me, which happens pretty regularly, look at my username, and I also defend cops a lot, they won't be able to dox me. Well, someone tried to dox me anyway, and they somehow came to the conclusion that I was this kid a year below me in the same high school as I was at the time. So I had to both try and convince the dox guy that that wasn't me, and I had to go to this kid and explain that I'd somehow accidentally stolen his identity and he should watch out for a crazy dude on the internet. I must have put enough doubt in the doxer's mind cause nothing really happened after that. Not me but my brother. When he was in 1st or 2nd grade he felt like not doing his homework for a solid week. When confronted by his teacher about this, he decided to tell her that we had a death in the family and lost an aunt. My mom is one of 9 and I guess he figured the teacher wouldn't ask too many questions. He was almost scotch-free until he went grocery shopping with my mom the next week and ran into the teacher in Derry. My mom was very confused when the teacher was apologizing for her loss. Both heads turned to my little bro and he has to sit there and explain it to both of them. He got grounded and my mom and I still laugh about it. It was nearing my birthday, and I got arrested for something one of my friends did and blamed me for. I was a good kid, so I was freaking out. I was 16 at the time, so when I got arrested I got my age mixed up and accidentally said 17, which meant I'd be tried as an adult. Thankfully it never went though, and the judge said that since it was my first offense that it be let off the hook. I explained later that I was only 16. But that could have ended pretty badly. My girlfriend and I used to buy milk at the 7-Eleven across the street from our apt, because for whatever reason their gallons of 1% were always $1 cheaper than the grocery store. Reza, the young Middle Eastern guy who managed the store, got to know us fairly well, in that we would always greet each other, and occasionally if he saw their stocks of 1% gallons running low he would store one in the back for us because he knew we would always come in at like 2 p.m. every Sunday for milk. Really nice guy. The week before we took a vacation, the girlfriend was studying hers off for her exam, so I did the grocery shopping alone. Because we were leaving midweek for our trip, I only bought a half gallon of milk. Of faking course, Reza assumes the worst. He assumes that we've broken up. He asked where she was and I just kind of grumbled, ready to launch into explaining how her test was tomorrow and whatnot. But before I could, he just launched into this whole big apology like he didn't realize, and how he just got divorced and how he misses her every day. I just didn't have the heart to tell him that she was just busy today, and that we were leaving for the week, so I just went with it. I didn't want my GF to think I was a sitbird, so I neglected to tell her when I got home. 2 weeks later, coincidentally the GF is busy working a weekend shift to make up for our week off. I go back in, grab a gallon of 1%, and quickly realize that looks bad, so I turn around, put the gallon back, and grab the half gallon. The whole time Reza is watching me, dejectedly. He starts telling me it gets better, hang in there, we can grab coffee if I want to talk. I politely decline, and quickly realize this lie is going to spiral out of control real fast. I think I told the GF that they were out of gallons and Reza didn't save us one this week. In the ensuing weeks, I proceeded to make all efforts to buy milk when the GF wasn't around. She still didn't know. I decided to start working out, so I was able to justify to Reza the purchase of a gallon of 1%. We would normally chat for a few minutes and we would ask each other how things were, and we would both give vague answers and wish each other well and be on our way. Eventually, one day the GF goes to 7-Eleven on her own when I wasn't around. I guess Reza helped her, made small talk, but was definitely weird towards her. She texts me about it, and at this point I knew the jig was up and I had to come clean. When I get home I explain everything to her, and she laughs, calls me an idiot, but at the same time thought it was cute for me to keep up the facade and commiserate with Reza, who was clearly dealing with some of his own issues. She decided that we needed to stage a reunion. So the following Sunday, we waltzed in, arm in arm, looking cheery. We could feel his eyes following us around the room. I made eye contact with him once or twice. He was trying desperately and failing to hold back the biggest knowing grin I've ever seen. Finally we go to check out and he starts wringing his hands and finally bursts out about he was rooting for us and how happy he was that we worked it out. The look of excitement and happiness on Reza's face was probably one of the most uplifting moments I've ever had. He told us repeatedly how we give him hope and how not the whole world is evil. Holy crap. Glad we could help you, Reza. Sorry I lied about the milk.